Three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Project Egg Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of speaking with Christina Jandali. How you doing today, Christina?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it, and I really want to ask, what is your story?
What is my story? Oh, go right in. I love it. So I guess it kind of comes down to what got me here and where I am today. And so for me, it kind of began, I was working in corporate space. I was working in finance. I'd spent years working, a dozen years at this time spending building up my career in finance. And I had everything checked off, all the boxes checked off. I had money in the bank. I had a successful career. I had a house. I had a new husband, all the things that you think that you'd want, a baby on the way. And yet still part of me was thinking, like, is this really all there is? And I thought, like, who am I to be thinking this? Like, I've got all the things that I've thought I wanted, and here I have it. And still it felt like something was missing. And what was it really worth creating all of this for what? And so kind of started thinking of, like, what else is there? And, what else am I really after? And it was actually when my daughter was born, I remember holding her in my arms and looking into her eyes and just thinking, like, I just wanted all the world of possibility for her. I wanted her to have everything, right? As a typical parent, you want your child to have all the possibility and the best for them in the world. And then I realized, like, who am I to be wanting this for her when I'm not currently living that for myself? And I wanted her to follow her dreams and go after what she wanted and create whatever she wanted to create in the world. And I wasn't living that at all. And, I think we all know that we learn so much more from how people behave. We learn from our parents and how they show up, not so much what they say, but what they do and how they leave us feeling. And so I decided in that moment that I was going to take on that responsibility and pave the way of possibility for her, of what doors could open up for her, and demonstrate to her what it was like to follow my dreams, even though I had no idea what it was. Would love to say that I had it all perfectly laid out, but I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was something different than what I was currently living. And, it's funny to say, like, I would love to say too, that moment, everything changed, and that was the turning point. It was just the beginning. And it took another child later before I started to realize, okay, like, what is this that I'm really meant to be doing in the world? And started to explore, like, what am I good at? And how can I support people? And how can I take my years of experience in the corporate space and the financial space and use it to a business that gives me freedom and flexibility, which is what I craved and desired so much more of, being able to live on my own terms and build my own dreams, not someone else's. So I started dabbling, trying different things. I started coaching with financial advisors and helping them grow and scale their business. And I thought, well, it's something I know. I can teach them this. I can teach them to, seven figures, multi seven figures, and building out their teams. And then I was like, oh, this is very much in the box. It was very much in the box still. And so I knew that wasn't, like, I wanted out of the box, and I was just replicating a lot of the same experience, but, maybe a little bit more under my control. Not that I'm a control freak or anything, but I realized, like, I just wanted a lot more flexibility. So I started thinking I really wanted to work with business owners, and I didn't know that I didn't trust myself enough to know, did I really have the skill set to help business owners? I didn't start a business from scratch. I was working under the umbrella of a big corporation. And although it was building a team and a business under that environment, it was still under the safe umbrella of a big company, with a lot of the company resources. I was going through the whole conversation, who am I to be doing this? And so I started testing what I had learned and what I'd gained over the years from my experience in working with some business owners, and it worked. It started working. So I started developing and helping other people do that. And then over time, I realized that things were happening a little bit slower than I'd anticipated. And I had one of those moments of, hands in my head, snobby tears coming down and pouring down, looking at numbers I'd set for myself with my business. And I was so far off, and not being a, like, driven, committed person. I was like, how is this possible? Like, where did I go wrong? And I was like, what am I actually missing here? What have I not been bringing to the table here? And started realizing, I just felt that the online space was very much a cold medium. You would I'd send an email out, and then I would wait for a reply, and I'm like, oh, is anybody there? Did anybody hear it? Did they like what I said? Does it resonate? And so I'd be sitting there waiting, and I thought, there's gotta be a better way. And I craved that connection. And that's what had created so much success in my corporate space, was building relationships and connecting with people. And even though I'm a massive introvert and I like to hide behind the computer, I still crave that intimate connection with people. And it felt very disjointed having, who knows who was on the other side of receiving any of these emails. And I thought, oh, how can I replicate this in the online space? And that's where I found and realized Facebook group and building a community was the perfect place to be able to do that. And so I started building my community, and it just felt right. I started connecting with people, seeing people, having conversations with people. And I went from like struggling to try and have my first 5-figure month to having a $30,000 month in my first month of starting my group. And I was like, okay, I'm onto something. This works. I'm going to keep doing more of this.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So when you had that moment of realization and it really clicked and you had that humongous jump and that humongous leap, what did you do at that point?
So I think I was, I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Big Leap. It's a phenomenal book. I highly recommend it. It talks about reaching an upper limit. And, sometimes when we have like a thermostat setting for how good things can get. So I kind of hit my upper limit at that moment. I was like, wow, this is so easy and this is great. And it felt so good. So then I had a moment of, I remember having I was selling higher end, like private coaching at the time, one-to-one coaching at the time. And I had 17 no's in a row, 17 conversations with people. And every single one of them was a no and a no and a no and a no. And I thought, oh, geez, I thought it was smooth sailing. Here I am. Now what? And I realized that I'd hit a massive upper limit. And it was, we have all these beliefs that we're brought up with that we need to, I definitely had a belief of you need to work hard to make money. And, all of these things started coming up, like, who am I to be doing this? And what if I get found out? And I'm going through the imposter syndrome and all that. And so I started to recognize that this was coming up, and I had the opportunity to get some coaching around it and working through it, and started to say, like, okay, what was actually working and what wasn't working, and started doing more of what it was actually, got into my logical brain of thinking, like, okay, what was actually working, and let's focus back there, focus on service. It's not about me. It's not about, people saying no. And I thought, this is the best story I'm going to be able to share with my students later on, is how I went and turned this around after having, my best month ever, so 17 no's in a row, and how I managed to turn around. And I started focusing on how I could be of service to them and sharing that with them. And so things started to shift. I started doing more of what was working, and then continued to build significant momentum after that. But I definitely had a big blip in the road there.
So I'm curious to learn, why was the community, and I know you talked about it a little bit, but I'm really interested in going deep on this piece. Why was the community and building that community why was that so important? Why was that so critical for you? And why did that really click? Like, what about it?
So a couple things. I remember one time when I was sitting in my pile of tears and upset about like what wasn't working, and I was thinking about like what worked before. And I remember sitting down, and this is when I was in the corporate space, and I was sitting down for lunch with one of my mentors at the time. And I said to her, like, what do you think really is like the key to success? Like, what do you think the key is to business success? And she says, Christina, it's one thing. I'm like, okay, what is it? Tell me, I want the one thing. And she says, all it is relationships. And I was like, wow, really? No, it can't be that easy, right? And then when I started to look at, over time, realizing that it was about building relationships with people. It's about like allowing someone to be heard and understood, serving them, solving problems for them, helping them, making a difference for them, making an impact for them, which is, I know, a big thing for you, Ben, like we were sharing before we started recording as well, is making a bigger difference in people's lives. And that really stems from a relationship. And how can you build a true relationship with someone when you don't really get to know who's on the other side?
That's true.
That's
so true.
Yeah. And so I found that with the community and with the Facebook group, it was like giving me this inside access, this inside door to who I was speaking to, who was on the other side, who was I serving, and hearing them and giving them the space to share and to open up and to be vulnerable and to share celebrations and to share wins. And it had me buying in a lot more of my vision for not just my own business, but my vision for them and the possibility for them and the impact that I was able to make on them, and see the shifts that were happening as a result of that. And that's really what I think fuels me to keep going, is the difference that I get to make and the wins that people get as a result, or the shifts, that the breakthroughs that they have as a result. And to be able to get that real time in a community and have that sharing, it opened up, it made it fun. That's really what it came down to.
It's interesting that that's really a philosophy that it seems like you hold, is that relationships are the key to business. I actually think relationships are the key to everything.
Yes.
They're so, based on what I've studied and what I've learned in my lifetime, there's almost nobody that at the end of their life says, "Oh, I wish I had, worked more hours," or "I wish I
No.
had made more money." What they want, or what they talk about, are the people that they had experiences with, they had relationships with, and they want their loved ones to be close. I mean, recently my grandma passed away, and she was in hospice for a little while, and the one thing that always made her happy was when people would visit her, and when she got to share those moments with her loved ones. And I didn't mean to bring down the mood or anything, but I just agree with you so much so. And I think relationships really are so powerful, because it's that connection with another human being that over an extended period of time, that allows you to do so many things, and it's just so fulfilling and rewarding. So I'm so glad that the conversation went this way.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry to hear about your grandmother. And I think that, I mean, those are the things that we remember how people left us feeling, right? We remember those moments, those times. And I think that it's, in fact, I actually think that the online digital space is shifting away from this separation, away from, this disconnection. And we're starting to see, what, people used to have, sort of edited, highly edited images that were posted about the picture perfect life. And the more that things are moving in the online industry is more about raw realness, authenticity, connection. We're seeing a shift in businesses that have gone from being completely separated to having more connection with their audience and more people. And I think it's fantastic to see that there's this more of this desire and demand to be able to create that. And that's really where the industry is shifting as well, which I also think is a benefit to people at all stages of business, because people that are earlier stages of business, let's face it, you've got the time. Your calendar is not quite full yet, right? You've got the time to focus in building these relationships. And as you develop your company and as you have space and build a team, you can free up your time to spend more of your time building that connection or creating leverage connection in a way that gets seen. And that's why another reason why I love with Facebook groups is that if you're coaching someone, if you're supporting someone through a group, everyone gets to experience and see that experience and that dialogue going on. So there's people that are like browsing. How many times I don't know about you, Ben, but myself, I'll be in groups sometimes and I'll scan and I might not say anything, but I'm reading or watching, or I'm seeing something, I'm taking something in, I'm observing something that's going on, even if I didn't say anything myself. And so people are doing that all the time. And what a great way to be able to create that leverage connection and that dialogue that people get to be like a fly on the wall and have that experience of what it's like working with you, or what it's like, how you are showing up and how you're serving your audience.
I couldn't agree more. And that's actually one of the bedrocks of this podcast. Like, that's the whole reason why I started the show, is because the people and the conversations and the relationships that you get to build from it. I mean, it's changed my life so profoundly that I can't even begin to describe it. Seriously. So I'm curious to learn, when you're building your community and you're building your group, um, how do you initially reach out to start fostering that relationship? Because I know for the podcast, like, I reach out to people and I say, "Hey, may I please interview you?" And people are very happy to come on the show and talk a lot of the times. And so that's like a really, really cool way to start off. So I'm curious, how do you start and initiate those relationships?
So we could be here for days talking about lots of different ways of being able to initiate those relationships and inviting people to come into your group. So just playing off what you just shared with me as well, was talking about, okay, reaching out to people and asking if I could interview them for your podcast. Well, you can replicate the same experience inside of a Facebook group and be bringing other guests on that you have the opportunity to interview as experts inside of your Facebook group. Easy peasy way of being able to bring people in and have them potentially social sharing as well, letting them know, hey, I'm getting interviewed in this community, come check it out, inviting people to come in. So there's, I always like to say that when you're building your community, make sure that you're doing it in a way that's in alignment with what feels fun to you. Like we were talking about this earlier, when it feels like you're hitting, like you're banging your head against the wall and it feels like something's like, a ton of effort, way more effort than it needs to be. Sometimes it's because you're trying to do something where it's not your natural skill set. Just like if you are naturally great on video and you love speaking and you're trying to writing might be a challenge, or the vice versa. Sometimes you're great at writing, but being on video or speaking is more challenging and you kind of get tripped up there. So I think it's important that you get to build a strategy that's based around what lights you up, what excites you, how you show up at your best, making sure that you have the opportunity to do that. So kind of playing off your ways, like you can bring people in, you can interview them, personal connection with people, as well as like, okay, who do you already know in your circle that would be a perfect fit for what your group, like what your community is all about? And what value are you going to bring to them? I think, in business, it's easy to say, I'm not getting what I want, or I'm not getting the clients I want, or I don't have the audience I want. I'm not getting the engagement I want. Like, it's easy to be like ego focused sometimes, right? And trust me, I've been there lots of times, you guys. There's no finger pointing here at all. I've had all of those moments myself, right? But you're like, what about me? What about me? And you want to think about like, what is it like, be the first one to give, be the first one to be generous, be the first one to create the experience for your people. So what will they gain from being in your group? Because as communities are growing, there's more Facebook groups now than before, and they will continue to grow. Mark Zuckerberg's announced that this is, a key area of the company's focus as well. So as they continue to grow, it's like, well, it's not just the community that people are coming to. It's also like, what can you deliver? What are you going to share in there that would answer a top of mind question for them? So an example of this might be, I remember early on in my Facebook group, I was like, okay, what's something that people keep asking? Where do people get tripped up? And at the time I was helping, I was working with a lot of coaches and helping them with their enrollment sales conversation. And a lot of people kept getting tripped up. Like, what do I say in an enrollment call? How do I, lead into an offer? How do I transition the call? And so I thought, okay, this is top of mind question. In fact, there's programs that sell for thousands of dollars to teach people like a script that they can use on enrollment conversation. And I thought, does it need to be that complicated? If you just had 10 core questions that you can ask people on an enrollment conversation, that's your outline for your conversation. And this would be hugely valuable to people. So I invited people and said, hey, would it be valuable to you to have an enrollment script for your enrollment conversations to sell coaching packages or high ticket packages? Of course it was. Well, great. You can hop on over to the group. It's pinned. It's a pinned post inside the group, and there it is. It's yours for free. So it's giving them, just like, getting someone on your email list, or getting them, but having someone join your email list is no longer like, hey, just come subscribe to my newsletter. Isn't really like, wow, that's really going to grab me. But it's like, okay, if you want to get this resource, enter your email address and it'll pop straight into your inbox and you get to pick it up. So you're still giving them something that is beneficial, that's going to answer top of mind question to them. And then you get to continue going on what kinds of trainings and things that you're going to continue to provide in your community to make it a place that they want to be and want to hang out and invite their friends to come be at as well. So kind of a couple of things there.
So thank you for sharing all that, by the way. That was insanely valuable. And I also think that these sorts of, I hesitate to say strategies because I feel like that has a negative connotation almost, but like this way of this approach of, being very people and value centric, that can apply to any community. That can apply to any group. It doesn't have to just be Facebook, in my opinion.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and I actually think those are the dogs, if y'all can hear that. But I actually think that is a wonderful approach. So thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, when you are initially setting out to build your community and you're taking the first couple of steps to figure out, like, what sort of community are you building? I mean, is it like a forum type where people are going to ask questions and answer them? Is it more of like a high level mastermind, or is it, I feel like there are lots of different types of communities and groups and whatnot. So how, in your experience, have you really laser focused in on, okay, this is going to be the purpose of the group, and this is how I'm going to really develop it and run with it and grow it over time?
So there's two things. There's a free Facebook group that's used as a community builder. It's your audience builder. It's where it's your container to bring people in that are not necessarily paying customers. Some will be, some won't be, right? But it's your opportunity to bring people in and create a space for them and orchestrate their journey towards becoming a potential buyer, right? A customer client of yours. So you get to create the experience for them of what that looks like to move them from like, okay, I'm interested in what you're talking about, to like, I want that. And so a free Facebook group gives you the opportunity to create that container, because people are ready to buy at different stages, right? And if you just take a look at statistics, let's just say, in the online marketing space is maybe 2% of people will buy, are ready to buy immediately. That's 98% of people. They're not ready right yet, but doesn't mean they're not going to be. And so it gives you that space to nurture them. So there's the free Facebook group. There's another Facebook group which is centered around support for your paying clients and customers. So that's a very different experience. That's about creating where you're servicing your paying clients. You get to do deeper work with them. You're getting more into coaching, support, and helping them move along the line based on what programs, courses, whatever your mechanism is for teaching, that you get to help support them with getting the result that you promised, or that your program is designed to help them create if they follow the steps and do the work. So two very different, different ways and purposes behind a Facebook group. So one is for free and audience and be able to transition them into buyer. The other is for your paying customers and clients. So let's talk about the free Facebook group for a moment, because I think it's most relevant for most people as well, as creating that container. And from there, it's about getting clear on what your vision is and what you want your group to look like. And so there's different personality types for Facebook group hosts. One is what I call like the interviewer, right? And the interviewer is like the information gatherer. They don't need to be in the spotlight all the time, but they love to shine the light on everyone else. They love to be the investigator. They love to find out like the best of the best and like pull all that together and bring that, much like, as a podcaster, right, is probably in your nature to be this way, right? And it's like pulling all the best resources together, bringing it together and delivering that on a silver platter to your community and say, look, I did all the digging, I did all the research, and I'm now bringing you the best of the best, and here it is, and now you get to take this and run with it. So there's that style of the interviewer, the investigator. They're searching for answers and clues and pulling it all together. And then there is also what I call the girl next door. And the girl next door, I know, gentlemen, but it's that you'll get the name, but the girl next door wants to hang out, have fun, be everyone's good friend. This is probably very much like an outgoing person that wants to just like, this is someone that loves sharing every detail of what's going on in their life, right? We all know, like, and there's nothing wrong or right about any of these personalities, but it's about recognizing what type of personality you are. And so this type of person, they want to be friends with everyone. They're liking everything. They're engaging. They're probably spending a ton of time in conversation with people, and they're fabulous at building relationships. But the downfall with this person is is sometimes they don't have the ability to move people into becoming a buyer because they get stuck in the friend zone. Right? They get stuck in the friend zone, and they need help with strategy on how to move people into buying. So on the flip side, which I forgot to go into there for a moment, as well as with the interviewer style, the gain that they have is they're constantly learning. They love learning, they love consuming, they love sharing and finding out knowledge. Sometimes the downfall with that group of people, that group is being able to shine a light on themselves and really planting the stamp of them being the expert, because sometimes they don't give themselves credit for the amount of digging and knowledge and research that they do in order to come up with the answers, and are very often very humble of their own experience. And then the third type of personality is like the leader. The leader's like, we're starting a movement. This is what we're doing. Are you in? Are you out? Like, follow me. This is what we're going to do this together, right? This is our community. We're making a change. This is what we stand for. We are not about this here. And so this type of person is phenomenal at building a lot of culture, phenomenal at building a following. Sometimes their downfall is a bit of insensitivity to people that have a different viewpoint or may see things from a different perspective. And so sometimes they may struggle with enrolling different personality types because they're so strong and they're so bold and they see things very clearly one way of what they desire, that they may not have the patience to serve people that need more education or need more coaching or need more support in order for them to be able to move forward. So either way, there's pros and cons of both. But I think in figuring out your vision is figuring out your vision through the lens of what personality type is natural to you. And most people will have one that's like their main personality type and probably a secondary one that's like, oh yeah, I see pieces of myself in there. Maybe not 100% the same way, but I see pieces of myself there. And so it's really important that your vision for the group, if you're like that leader, like pave the way, we're making new things and we're leading and you're in, you're out. Well, you can't build a group that is focused on, kumbaya, holding hands and creating like this, this like chilled, comfy, warm, soft, like, gentle space, because it's not in your DNA to behave that way. And that's okay. And so I think that's where people go so wrong sometimes, is like, oh, I see someone else, they're doing it this way, so I should do it that way because it's successful for them. When in reality is, you hit leaps and bounds of success when you tune in and you operate from a place of who you naturally are and what naturally comes easy to you, so that you can sit in your zone of genius. And when you build your space and your community around that, that's where things start to move and really things start to come together.
Dude, that was awesome. So thank you for that. And I'll be the first to admit, on characteristic number 2 or trait number 2, I giggled. So clearly I have the maturity of a 13-year-old.
Yes.
but yes, that was very, very that was very insightful, and I'm very appreciative that you would share it. And I'm curious now, because I was thinking, as you're saying that, I was like thinking, okay, I think I figured out what type I am, but then I have a little bit of another one normally, and then sometimes every once in a while, like I have part of the third too, but that's actually when I'm the least effective, is when maybe I'm stressed or like, I'm like, then the third part will come out. Anyways, I'm curious to learn, what type are you, and how did you go through the process, or what was the process for you of figuring that out?
Oh, good question. The process for figuring it out. I think I'll start there, and then I'll share about for myself. I think I just started realizing, after working with hundreds of students through through teaching basic group strategies, started to realize certain personality types, certain way that they were showing up in the student only group was representative of the challenges that they would be facing and the wins that they would be having inside of their group. Start to realize, like, oh, there's some like consistencies here. And I'm very much like, I like looking for patterns and consistencies and putting processes behind things. So it's naturally how my brain works. I started realizing, okay, like, how can we start to categorize these people so we can see which space that they're in? And so and also recognizing too where which is the least effective zone that you're in when you're operating from that zone. So for me, I love collaboration and working with other people. Like I really enjoy connection with other people, much like we were talking about. The thing I felt like I was missing in my business was the connection and collaboration in relationships. So that part comes naturally to me. I love collaborating with other people. But I think I was alluding to it before as well, is like, I still like to be like the leader and the one being like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And let's do it together. Probably in a softer way than the extreme sense. But also, so I would say that as the leader personality is probably my natural first go-to, and the secondary personality would be into the interviewer, researcher, and coming up with them. But I think that they're both pretty close to one another. The friend next door zone, that is just not my, and it's funny, as much as I crave connection with people, it's just not my natural go-to. I don't use, it's funny, I teach Facebook and Facebook groups. And yeah, I was talking to someone today, I said, I don't even know when, but my last post on my personal page on Facebook was probably months ago. Like I do not use social media for personal use whatsoever. And so that's it. It's done. So I don't like sharing. I don't like sharing every little minutia detail of the things that are going on. And to me, like taking pictures and having to post things on social media, I'm like, oh my gosh, can someone just send me the picture? It feels like so much effort.
Wow. So it was by looking at the people who were showing up, the results that they were having, and recognizing what you also liked and didn't like, and how those things combined, and finding kind of the golden thread between all of it.
Yeah. And also knowing that if you can predict some level of like, sometimes, when we have this comparison, right, we think, oh, something must be wrong with me because it's not working for me the way it's working for someone else. And I remember even looking on as we're talking about some people that were like, would fit, and the girl next door is like their main personality. I'm like, geez, like I kind of want that connection and relationship with my audience and that raving fan base. But then I realized it doesn't look the same way. It's in a different way. And so it gave me the opportunity to be able to see like, okay, what's the benefit? Because each personality type has a very strong benefit, and when used well, creates significant results. But besides that, it's being able to see, okay, well, where's the downfall with this type of personality? So that people with a level of predictability can then say, okay, like now I know this is what I need to kind of watch out for and tune in into, pay attention to. So I don't need to not be who I am, because I always say, be you. You don't look good wearing someone else, like be you. But acknowledge where there's the downfall so that you can see and be able to, get the support that you need so that you're not falling into that space without knowing it, without having awareness around it.
That's brilliant. And I love, even kind of going back a little bit more, I love what you were talking about with the area of genius, or the zone of genius, and choosing and being very intentional about playing in that playground, and really excelling in that space. Because I'm of the belief that we should absolutely find what we're the best at and like triple down on that, even to the point of like I've started to plan out how I can literally outsource everything else in my life so that I don't have to even think about those things, and just focus on like the one or two things that are just, the super tippy top, like the best that I can do the best.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's huge. And, and I think too, sometimes people spend a lot of time trying to find out what that is. I honestly think that, it's where we spend all this time in our lives moving away from who we really are to, gain attention, love from parents, teachers, other people, relationship partners, whoever else that comes down the line, friends, kids. And so we spend all these years sort of adding on these layers and behaving in certain ways so that fits the mold and fits the box. And then we spend all of these other years unraveling those layers to come back to center to find out who we really are and who we're really meant to be and how we're really meant to show up in the world. And so I think that, I especially believe that the people that are pulled in the transformational space, that are pulled in this online education coaching space, in this transformational space of making a difference for people, I truly believe that part of the journey of being pulled in this direction is about the opportunity to pull back the layers of discovering who you really are, because there's no better personal development than building a personal brand. Like well, and I'd say being a parent too. Stack those both, and there's another, there's nothing in comparison. But there's no better personal development than, because you have to learn so much about yourself and let go of pleasing or behaving a certain way or pretending to be a certain way before you really find your stride. And so I'm guessing that some people tuning in might be like, geez, I've been wondering like who I really am and what I really want and what am I really good at, and not necessarily knowing what that is. And the only way that you start to gain clarity around that is by practicing, is by doing those things, is by trying things on and seeing how it feels like. Much like I was sharing in my story about realizing like, okay, this online space, don't like it, feels really cold, what else can I do? And then finding a way that really felt aligned for me, that allowed me to show up in a way that just came naturally to me. And everyone has that opportunity to be able to do that, and uncovering your zone of genius as well.
That's profound. And I really think that it's so critical, because if you don't recognize and you're not practicing self-awareness to the point of you see yourself as others see you, or you at least have the ability to, and you're just very, very clear on like, okay, I know I'm good at this, I know I'm not good at that. That's such an advantage. And to be honest, I feel like it's one of the keys to fulfillment and one of the keys of being able to build better relationships with people, kind of bringing it full circle. Because if you don't know who you really are, or let me rephrase that, if you're not choosing to live as who you really are, then how do you expect other people to be able to connect with you fully? Like if you're not putting your full self out there, then you can't fully connect with somebody else. So you can't fully build a relationship and explore the possibilities and the boundaries, if there are any, because they don't know who they're building a relationship with. So there's no possible way to get even closer there. And so that kind of leads me to the question, and I'm curious, do you feel like you are truly embracing who you are at your core now? And two, it's kind of a two-part question. Do you think you had to have gone through all the things you did to get to where you are, or could you have shortcutted it in any way?
Okay, so I think we never end this journey of self-discovery, because I think that no matter how far we go, we discover new things about ourselves. I do believe that I authentically operate from a place of like realness and authenticity of what feels true for for me and what matters, and openly sharing and not needing to be perfect. That was a hard one for me to get over too, is like thinking from the outside looking in, everything should look perfect. And so that was a tough one for me to let go of. And especially in the corporate space, where working in finance, people were, entrusting me and my team to, manage millions and millions of dollars for them. And so there wasn't really room for, there wasn't really, there was a very surface level front on, on how you operate. And so much different in this space where you really get to truly be fully authentic. So I think that, answering your question, yeah, I do believe that I'm operating from that place. And talking about like, do you get to shorten, can you shorten your learning curve, or can you shorten that destination? I think that our journeys are in the perfect timing for where we're meant to be at. I really believe that. And I also think it goes alongside with when our leadership's ready to handle what's ready to come our way. And so when you look back at different life-changing experiences that you had, those monumental moments that really stuck with you, that shifted your trajectory, that had those moments of realization, or saw things from a new perspective. It's not that that information wasn't available to you before, but you weren't able to see it yet. I know this might sound very confusing, but think about this. How many times have you heard the same message or been taught the same thing over and over and over again? And it was the way that one person said it to you at one point in time that it finally landed. And you're like, oh my gosh, this makes sense. I finally get it, right? We have those moments. And it happens because not that we didn't see, not the information wasn't available to us before, but we had a lens up. We were wearing, shades that we weren't able to see that for ourselves. And so everyone's journey is different on when you're open to receiving the message. It's like reading the same book over again. You read it, one book, and then, 5 years down the line, you read the same book, and it's like you're reading a completely different book because you're reading it from a completely different level of awareness that you had before.
I think that's awesome. And I love, what you're saying about not being able to see it, because I really think that comes down to the level of consciousness that you're operating at. And I think that's a function of how aware are you of yourself, because the more you learn about yourself, the more I feel like the more of a foundation you have with which to then operate from, with which to draw strength from, draw power from, draw clarity, which allows you to kind of peel back the things that aren't really important, to embrace what is important, and then be able to see new things and to be able to recognize opportunities that were always there, but you didn't see them. And I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me where I'm, doing work on myself. I have a journal right. I'll just show you. I have a journal right here, a book right over here. Like, I'm always trying to work on myself, and I can't tell you how many times something clicked or something changed, and it was just like, oh, this is magical. This was here the whole time, but I just didn't see it. And so, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm curious now, because I really do agree with what you said about like the journey, and I feel like we've never really arrived, right? And so I'm curious, between now and like 10 years from now, what truths do you hold today that you think you will have rethought or will have gone in the face of in 10 years from now? Like, what truths do you hold today that you think will be untrue in 10 years from now?
I'm not even sure I have a definitive answer for that, because it's, the prediction of, I mean, here's what beliefs come, and this comes to our level of consciousness as well, is that what we see as fact today is simply our interpretation. It's simply our belief. So what feels true to me today feels very true to me today. So will that feel true to me in 10 years? I don't know, because my perspective will change. But as of right now, I have no idea. I have no idea what is going to be different in 10 years from now, because what feels true today feels very true today, because it's a belief that I have. And, as late Wayne Dyer said, when we change the way we look at things, the things that we look at change. Right. And so when we look at things from a different perspective, but what happens is, think about it, is that we're operating today, we're in a box, and our outward results, our success, everything that we have in our life is in the box. And we don't have the ability to create a result outside the box until we elevate our consciousness, and until we elevate our awareness, until we pull ourselves out of the box and start operating as that next level. So let's just say, for example, you have a 6-figure business today. And okay, so you've got the team, you've got your programs, everything fits in the 6-figure business today. Well, if you want to get to 7-figure business, then you've got to start to act, behave, and be like the 7-figure CEO. You've got to start acting and operating like the 7-figure CEO. Do you know exactly what it's going to be like from there? No, but it's like trying on the hat and pretending like, okay, if I were the 7-figure CEO, how would I be operated? What would I be thinking? What would I be doing differently? So I think it's always this game that we're playing of like, okay, what do I think I would be thinking differently? And how would I be operating differently? How would I be running things differently? I mean, I think the big thing for myself is where I know that I have a lot of room for growth as well is team, and letting go of more things. And we were talking about earlier about letting go of things that I'm not good at. I'm great with that, but elevating my team to really grow and take charge on their own and have their own verticals to run within the company, that seems like so foreign for me right now from the way that it's running, because I'm very much involved in the different areas of the company, even though that I have people doing different pieces of the operation. So, but in regards to the truth, I have no idea what that's going to look like, but I definitely know my perspective on team, and that piece will be significantly different from where it is today.
With the box concept, which I think is awesome, it seems like if we have the box and we take ourselves out of the box, we're over here, the box is still here, then does that not just create another box? Like if we're trying to go from here to here, like what would be the end goal of that? Like, is it to just totally destroy the box, or to like get the box that we want? Like what's the outcome that we're looking for, or are we looking for?
So yeah, so you're just gonna, each level is creating a new box until that box is now comfortable. So it's like taking yourself out of the box, and then it's about, okay, getting rid of the old box, destroying the old box and creating a new box. But what happens is when we just try something on for size once, we don't stay there, right? Like when we're trying, like how long does it take to create a new habit, as an example, right? I mean, there's different viewpoints on the 21 days, 30 days, 45 days, depending on who you follow and what they say. But let's just say, it takes a month to create a new habit. So if you operate for one day of thinking and behaving outside that box, you're going to go right back to the box tomorrow. And you're going to keep going back to the box because that's your comfort zone and that's what you know, and that was what comes easily to you. So it sounds like a very simple process, but it doesn't make it easy to establish and behave and operate from that place, because it's outside of what is known for you. And then over time, that will become your new comfort zone. And over time, that's like your new normal. And then that becomes the opportunity to continue to stretch. And like, much like you were saying, is like, you've never arrived. You have never arrived. There's always somewhere to go. There's always another level. There's always a new learning. There's always a new understanding. There's always a new level of consciousness that we have the opportunity to step into. And that's I think that's the driving force between so many, between entrepreneurs, is like this desire to like just keep searching, keep finding, keep uncovering, keep hitting, keep getting to these new levels and really seeing like what's possible for you. What can you, like, what do you have the opportunity to create that has never been created before, and who you get to become as you create this.
So as you're thinking about those different goals and where you're trying to reach and where you're trying to get to, like what is the bar that you've set for yourself? Like at the end of your career, or the final days, where do you want to have gotten, and why did you choose that?
So I don't know if I'm as far out as thinking like, on my deathbed, where do I want to be and what's that going to look like? I think the biggest thing is making an impact for people, but I am very clear on my vision, and I have no idea how long it's going to take me to get there. And I have no idea how exactly it's going to come together. But like one big desire for me is to help create 1,000 millionaires. I have no idea, like I said, on how I'm going to be able to create that, but I know that it's something that I am meant to create, and it's something that keeps coming up in my horizon. It keeps coming up when I spend time through visioning, and I know that it's something that I'm meant to create. And I also know that, coming from my background in finance, that it breaks my heart to see so many people, in multiple different areas, in the online space, in multiple different spaces where it's creating an income and thinking that money is like, or seeking of money. People, and I've had those moments of seeking for money. I remember, being stuck and sticking groceries back on the shelf because I went over my budget and I couldn't afford them. So I've been there. So I know what it's like to have that experience, and where money is like, that key focus. But once you have the opportunity to get there, there's so much promotion and sharing about, money mindset and getting places with money. And it's very money centric, and money's not a big motivator for me. Although it's something that I think is incredibly important. And for me, wealth is something that really matters, because it's your way of being, it's your lifestyle, it's how you show up, it's giving generously, it's the way that you get to live, it's financial freedom. And that's not money. Those are two totally different things. And so as I was getting clear on like what this is, like, okay, well, I can help people create money. I can help them create a 6-figure, multi-6-figure, 7-figure business. Okay, I can help people do this. But like, what's really like, what really matters? It's not like the milestone of the money. Money is just a representation of, of the, I think the inner work and the shifts that we're making internally and the things that we're doing and the value we're putting out into the world. But wealth, on the other hand, is a completely different way of being. It's not being worried about where the next dollar is going to come from. It's living in an abundant life. It's living in a place of creation, of having, of giving, of generosity, and that's really what I take a stand for. And so when I talk about creating 1,000 millionaires, to me, that's just not people that are going to make $1 million, but actually having wealth, like actually having a net worth of $1 million, having that space where they're, and who knows where it's going to go from there, but that's definitely something that's been calling me.
Well, that's amazing, and I appreciate you being willing to share that, and I'm very grateful for the discussion. So now I want to ask you one more question, and I want to be very respectful of your time. So we'll wrap it up after that. And by the way, I want to ask it from like specifically my perspective, so just a little bit more context. Like I'm 24, and yeah. So what question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Now I gotta think about it. I don't have a quick answer for that one. I'm gonna have to give it a minute and think about it. What's the one question? It's a great question though. I think that, one of the things that, I think something that's really powerful, and Tony Robbins often talks about this, is like the quality of our life is determined by the questions that we ask, right? And so the quality of the questions that we ask determines the answers we get, and determines the results, the experience that we get to have. And so I think that the question, to me, that I think like really like that I take a stand for, and that I think I believe like wholeheartedly in, is like the cornerstone of everything, is more about like an internal question of like what you get to ask yourself each day. Because it's not necessarily about, yes, asking other people, but it's like, what do I get to ask myself every day? So a couple of questions, and I call this like, so we have this, a primary, we usually have a question that we have going on in our internal dialogue all the time, that we ask ourselves all the time. And everyone's question is different. And Tony Robbins refers to it as the primary question. So you think about like, we have this question that's coming up in our horizon all the time. And so sometimes it can be a positive question, sometimes it can be a negative question. So what I mean by that is it might be a question like, how can I make this better? So everything that you do is like, how can I make this better? How can I make this better? How can I make this better? So the value of that is you get to improve on what it is that you're creating, and you get to get better and better. The downside of that question is that nothing ever feels like it's good enough. So I think that the best question you can ask yourself is, what is the question that I continue to ask myself day in and day out? What's the question that keeps coming up in my horizon? And how is that serving or supporting my mission? Is it aligned with my mission, or do I need to, like, what do I need to shift? And so I think everyone has the opportunity here that's tuning in and listening, is what is the question? Just tuning in, thinking, watching your thoughts for a day or a couple days, and just tuning in, like, what's the thing that you always go to and ask yourself, of what that internal question that you have. And when I started to take a look at this, I started, realizing, okay, like, what can I shift into questions? So questions that I've used over time, it'll shift, is like, how can I serve today? Or who can I serve today? Right? Like, how can I serve today? Or how can I make a difference today? Who can I serve today? And just coming from a place of service and giving and generosity before anything else. And I really believe the more we put out, the more comes back to us. So less we start thinking about ourselves, the more we start serving, it comes back to us. Another primary question that I've had as well is that, because, I'm driven and focused and action taker and, get things done, sometimes I don't have the opportunity to really just stop and just be. And so a question that I've often asked myself, and the question that I've had, repetitively asking, is like, what would love do in this moment? And I know that may sound strange to some people, but thinking from an emotional, loving, kind being place rather than doing, because I've got like the doing and the busyness that comes naturally to me. But to operate from a place of who do I get to be and ask that question really allows me to like slow it down, have a check in, reconnect with my heart, and see what comes up from that place. And so that's what I would say is that what is the question you're not answering is actually finding the question that you are asking and seeing if it's the question that serves your mission.
Thank you very, very much. Um, I literally just challenged like every question that I've ever been asking myself. And yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you very much for that personally. Like that, that literally is going to profoundly change my life. And I'm so, so grateful that, that you said that. So seriously, thank you very, very much. And
Thank you.
to thank you for the time that you've shared with me today. This has been very special for me. So I just want to say thank you very much, Christina, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Ben. It's been a pleasure, and you asked some great questions today.
Thank you very much, and to everybody who is watching and listening, I want to thank y'all too because y'all are the reason that I do this, and I'm so grateful that y'all would choose to share your time with us today because y'all's time is very valuable as well. So thank you all. Thank you, Christina. And I will see y'all on the next episode. Take care now.